Welcome back to Side Quest VIII, episode 13. And back with me this time to talk about Final Fantasy VIII is my astute and perennial companion, Mr. Wes Schantz. Wes, good to see you. How you doing?
All right, I'm feeling good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I see that you have given us a nice memento mori behind you and a reminder that we are on the clock and that time is of the essence and that we better make time to do to talk about time today because you, like Final Fantasy VIII, are now giving us a nice reminder of the fact of time, perhaps the theory of time. Uh, but it's nice to see you in a different place.
I was
Uh,
gonna say I could put the guns on the wall over there in the background. That might be even more to the point here.
Yeah, no,
Let's forget.
put like maybe a knife under one of them or taped one to a knife too. That might be sort of funny. Um, but so we convened today to talk about the wanderings of Squall and his various companions, and well, I suppose honestly, the wanderings of Balam Garden. Now that it has cast itself asunder from its roots, as it were, a garden without roots, a garden that is now an aquatic garden, moving across the water and comes into collision with a place called Fisherman's Horizon, FH, what the locals call it, which does not care for us. Interesting. And I'm going to go through and just list this very quickly, but I'll just mention this because we've just found out what the true nature of Seed is, and that in fact our true mission has just begun, and that it is to fight against this sorceress Idea, who is the wife of Sid, who was material, who was essential in the creation of the original seeds. And in fact, we find out that she has her own white seeds, who have their own really cool ship. In any case, when we just to backtrack a little though, even before that, or the conditions under which we do discover this information, the conversation with Sid, which you mentioned last time, offer an interesting juxtaposition with Squall in the beginning of the game. Because in the beginning of the game, obviously, we received control of our characters after our character, Squall, after the opening cinematic, on the same bed that we find Sid on now. And Sid has apparently been crying and admits to crying. So I just wanted to talk at some point about the juxtaposition here between Sid and Squall as well. But so we see Adea's white ship. They request Elone or Elone, I guess Elone, and we meet Elone, and she has an interesting interaction with Squall in which she puts pressure on him and makes the same request of him that Princess Leia makes of Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars: A New Hope. In fact, she says, "You're my only hope," which is a nice allusion to Star Wars. And Squall shows his sort of truculent, anti-garrulous, very teenage boy, I think is how Professor Kozlowski would describe it in his own idiom. To he doesn't want the pressure. He says he's got enough problems. He doesn't want to be the hero of light. He's in some ways, and perhaps we can talk about this, like Plato's ideal leader or ideal guardian leader, the one who's got things to do and doesn't want to lead, is
Yeah.
Plato's ideal leader in the Republic, because such a person doesn't want power. In any case, we then, after we've made it to Fisherman's Horizon, been given a very cold greeting because we are perceived as mere mercenaries, though now we know to some extent, or at least better, our true nature. Though the theme of us not knowing what's going on is iterated and reiterated in this part when Squall thinks to himself, "I don't know anything. I don't know what's going on," like usual. He, again, very evanescence teenager in a way, but also in line with the theme of disorientation that we've been mentioning, and even nested disorientation. We're disoriented about any number of things: his relationships to other characters, the nature of his work, the nature of his home, the nature of his universe, and all of these and even what the political situation is too, and how he and his home relate to it. And now he's just now learned the true nature of his home to some extent, and that it has a garden master, that it's supposed to fight the seed, and that what he thought he was is not what he is. What he is something better, but ostensibly morally better, but not something that he's necessarily prepared to be. And Elone is calling on him to be that. And he is in this sort of Joseph Campbell, Hero with a Thousand Faces, seemingly wanting to refuse the call. That said, we meet the mayor, this Mayor Dobie, who's got a wife named Flo, or I should say probably a partner in Fisherman's Horizon, because it seems a bit like California. It's a little like a hippie commune. It's people that have rejected, they're pacifists, and people who have rejected the way of life of their native home. So it's a lot like San Diego, actually, minus the huge military presence in San Diego. And so he continues to extend the cold greeting, and very plainly, without pleasantries, says, when are you leaving? And Squall explains his emissary, which he's been chosen to do for some reason, even though he's so anti-garrulous, again, laconic, as it were, thinks a lot more than he speaks, but he doesn't think that much either. But he finally shows that he does want some answers to things. But in any case, he tells the mayor that they don't have a definite timeline, but they're going to try and get out of there as soon as possible, and they'll respect the way of life of the people, which turns out not to be what happens, but under some duress, I would say. The Galbadians then show up and threaten violence to the mayor, who tries to reason with them. And perhaps this is a criticism of his way of thinking and way of life. Squall jumps in and helps out, though I chose to hesitate, and my team members asked what was wrong with me. But I thought that was very Squall. I then 3 Galbadian soldiers are then defeated, and this very clunky machine, not the hardest machine we've defeated by any means. And it turns out, and I'd really love to hear your sort of allegorical or symbolic understanding of this, turns out it was being driven by our 3 team members that we left back at the missile bay. In my case, and I think the same with you, Irving, Selfie, and Renoa. And then, similar to what you said would happen to a character, if Renoa were in my party when I went to Balam Garden, there would be a special scene where I show her around, sort of like this reminds me of like a throwback to the Golden Saucer, the date that one goes on with usually Ares, but sometimes Tifo, or even Yuffie, or even Barrett, I think, and maybe even Sid. People have found all sorts of ways to break the game or play it in unique ways, as it were. But here, Renoa has special dialogue. She waits, and the music changes. And the music changes again to that song that we talked about earlier, and we debated the name of, but does riff Eyes on Me eventually. And this is the same as when we saw her in the prison. So now there's this triple connection between the original song and the Laguna relationship. And then this next time that we see Renoa, and then now this next time. And, having been in love and had girlfriends before, and, the moment that you see the person after not having seen them, it is a special moment, right? This moment of recognition. And to have the music change like that, I think is a very good representation of how special that moment can be, but also that this moment obviously is special. And in this case, we know it is, because Renoa says that she thought about Squall when she was thought she was going to die. She's faced something real. She's matured. There's something changed about her. And I had the chance to say, I think either whatever, you may have the actual dialogue in front of you right now, or I kind of felt the same, or I would have missed you too. And I chose the middle option that I thought was most romantic. Actually, I was like, it was basically like, I missed you too. And she said, she punches me in the stomach and says, that makes me so happy. And then kind of pranced off. And then I ran back to start a side quest that I think you already finished with the old or the fishing master that we see in the cinematic, fish until he's almost killed by Balam Garden's crash landing. I meet Irving. He expresses some concern for Selfie, and that's where I got to, Wes. And so I thought that would be a nice outline with which to start. Thank you for letting me lay that out there, as it were.
Yeah, no. I don't have that dialogue in front of me because the person who I'm watching did a different route. So what they have here is what happens if the other team members show up. And you do have three options this time too. You can say you felt responsible, you were glad to see them, or it didn't mean anything. When Renoa, who was be with you, asks why you look so happy to see them. So it's the similar. It seems like a similar kind of gradation of feeling that's being conveyed there. But it doesn't look like she goes over and punches you when you respond in this case.
That reminds me, Wes. That's one of that. So there are three musical changes I wanted to mention in this one, in this segment. So when Renoa is spoken to specifically, but also when the three characters come out of the machine, do you remember which theme comes on? The music changes.
Yeah, me, right? The Balam.
The Balam Garden, because
Yeah.
and which I think supports our theory from earlier that the primary unit is the group, is the team, not the person here, because what does it mean that Balam Garden's music comes on now, especially after the music not playing in Balam Garden when we went back there? Means that they're finally home, right? Not just them, but Squall too. And in fact, he thinks, yes, they made it. Or I have it written down here actually exactly. He thinks, and I have a video of it or two if I don't. Yes, they're all right, is what he thinks.
Yeah.
Exclamation mark. And then Balam Garden music comes on again. Masterful musical storytelling, I think, in indicating, I think, something that is a primary truth about people, that it's not the place that you are that makes you home. It's the people, it's your family, or which is what these people are becoming with each other, given the level of closeness that they're attaining, facing mortal danger and just all sorts of unique situations together over and over and over again. Not to mention the fact that they will find out that they have even deeper connections to each other already established. That who knows, and I mean, we'll have to talk about that in the theory of friendship, whether that has affected the trajectory of their friendship, right? Like, can such underlying unconscious knowledge or experience with people affect how deep, and whether one would become friends with somebody even with amnesia or without knowledge of it? Like, say, would you and I, with all of our experience being friends, if we were to meet and not be able to remember any of our experiences together, would we very quickly become friends because of all of that, or would it, would it still take a normal amount of time? Would we maybe even just fixate on something else and not become friends? One wonders. But I'm putting the cart before the horse, as it were, even though that may be appropriate in a time compressed state. But so, what do you think about some of this stuff? These white seeds, Idea, this Elone. Oh, another unique thing that she says is that if they say you can't change the past, but if you could, wouldn't you? Which is a very, very foreshadowing sort of thing to say, or a very telling thing. It sounds like a cliche. I think when I first played the game, it's like, well, yeah, sure. Thank you for sharing just one of the many cliches that so many RPG NPC characters share. Probably what my students say about me when they call me an NPC these days. All these cliches this guy is shelling out. But so we get a lot more insight into the presence of Estar, the fact that Laguna is real and is uncle to this woman, that this woman is herself adding to Squall's task. So he's got like the Sid task, which is just be a seed. Now he's got the Sid Idea larger task of really be a seed. But then also Elone says he is her only hope. And so the Bildungs is really being pushed onto our Squall here. And I guess my question is that a consequence of becoming oriented in the world? So the Spider-Man trite cliche is, with more power comes more responsibility. But so my question, the deeper non-NPC question that requires nuanced thinking and insight, I think, to answer, which is why I'm asking you and not ChatGPT, is with greater understanding of the nature of the world and one's place in it, does that create sort of deontologically a greater respect in one's being? Does one even have a choice? Like once one learns, like more Ecclesiastes, with what great wisdom is great suffering.
Right. Yeah. So I'm thinking about how even Sid keeps calling Squall up there to steer the
All
ship,
the time.
right? And it's almost comical. It is comical. But it does seem like there is some sort of reserve that has been tapped here for Squall that Sid could always perceive in him and was always symbolized by the gun blade, but is now coming into play. And I think another really important scene that we see, it's very brief, is Squall's dream or memory of when he's a
Yes,
little kid, right?
yes,
And again, he's talking to himself, so it's in that sort of parenthetical mode, the grayed out text boxes, but he's saying to himself, like, I need somebody to tell me how not to depend on people. But if somebody tells me, then I'm depending on them. So he's like, he sees the kind of closed loop of his worldview of depend on no one, right? It's not viable. And we see this memory of him in the rain. He's a small kid. It's like a Charlie Brown t-shirt on, and he's saying something about how he's talking to like an absent sister, right? About how he's going to be okay, how he's going to be, he's going to take care of himself or something to that effect. And so we see kind of the roots of his attempts to be independent and to not need others in this apparently traumatic, yeah, very comic book hero type backstory moment. And in the uh, like the mission that he's sent on here to explore Fisherman's Horizon, scope it out, spy a little bit, but mostly to talk to the mayor. I think we get a really interesting other counterpoint, sort of for the the dynamic that we've seen develop now between Sid as a leader and Squall as a leader, and then we have this mayor who's, like you said, pacifist, um, seemingly very passive, right? He's in the center of a kind of inverted garden almost because of the way that his house is surrounded by all these solar panels and they kind of have a mirroring effect. But it's like an upside down garden essentially. Um, it's completely still. It's completely like charged with energy that it's receiving passively by doing nothing. Um, and it's very tranquil. So this Fisherman's Horizon place uh, is a kind of interesting inversion of the garden in a weird way. So the collision of them is hilarious, right? Squall is sort of to blame because he isn't up there steering it, right? And Sid comes on the intercom and is interrupted immediately by realizing they're about to crash again. Um, but of course, Squall is the one who is sent out to smooth things over with the natives, right? Make sure that everything is okay. And again, I get the sense that Sid knows more of what's going on than he's letting on, but it's very effective as a pedagogical strategy to appear not to know and to let to let Squall do the exploration, do the reconnoiter, and and in the course of it, like you mentioned, like your other party members show up sort of miraculously out of the belly of this beast that they had just fought, right? So the mystery of how they survived the explosions and things seems to be that they hopped into the almost destroyed armored thing, and somehow it got dispatched to this next mission and reunited us. Uh, so yeah, that's my initial take on all this is just to say that what we're learning about Squall has a lot to do with how we see him sort of reflected by or in dynamic opposition to these other leaders, um, both of whom he saves, right? Like you do as the hero of a video game. No, okay.
I think I think that's great. Sorry, I had to pick up my dog really quickly. He was staring at me like he was about to start barking, so I had to divert my attention. But And funny thing about having these conversations online is that there's an unnatural element in that you always have to be thinking of what you're going to say next in sort of rude fashion while also still naturally responding. But what I was going to ask you was about Squall's reasoning to the mayor. He has sort of an unconscious grayed out box reasoning that we hear at first. When he first hears about pacifism, he seems to give his sort of gut type one thinking reaction, which is, man, that sounds dull. Maybe even the player's reaction to pacifism, because there may be a question here with the mayor to us as players, like, why do you enjoy this violent video game? What are you doing here, hurting these people and harming them? Now, obviously, we're trying to save the world, and we understand you have to, and Squall will explain this, you have to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, but it is an interesting question. Why do we derive joy from this sort of media? There is something captivating about it, something that incentivizes us to work so that we can purchase, so that we can get the funds necessary to purchase this experience, and then we even give our time to it. So we give, a representation of time through money as well as our actual time to this experience of something that has violence in its opening CGI over and over again. An actual sword fight, gun sword fight, as it were. But then his philosophy almost seemingly fails him. His desire to reason is not going to work with these thugs, these Galbadians, who are just going to burn down his home. So it's not just that he would die, but he would fail to even save his city and its whole ethos. Squall then, and there's another diversion from his character that I chose. Usually I play him pretty whatever and straight. But with Renault at this time, I gave her some romance. And with Mayor Dobie, I chose to explain myself. And he's like, sometimes the thing is, in the world, there are people who are already trying to fight, and you don't have time. And he actually mentions time as an essential element, right? He's like, you don't have time to explain yourself. So you have to fight. And it's sad, but it's the world in which we live. In international relations theory, we would say that this is more of a realist perspective, that there are always large, powerful political units in existence as a fact. And since they are in existence, the fact is that they're going to enter into conflict with each other. And thus, one should always recognize that as a primary fact of the international system. This is not a liberal presupposition. So like the world in which we live as Westerners, at least for the last 30 years, has not believed in the tenets of realism, though realism is picking up steam now that there's a multipolar international system back in play with Russia, China, and the United States. Maybe we'll talk about that in when we talk about Galbadia at some point. But that all goes to say is that Squall recognizes that, or seems to recognize and suggest that peace is the greatest strategy. And if everybody were already peaceful, it would be insane to start a war. But since there are already warring individuals in the world, if one has reason on one side, one is going to also need the sword on one side, just in case the other side does not choose to reason. I think the fact that he saves the life of the mayor and this place that they almost destroyed in the first hand carries some water, but the mayor doesn't apologize to him. And so I wonder, can a practical, and the philosophers would love this question, but can a practical solution or a moral solution be an answer to a philosophical or rational question here? Can the result of this situation, and is the result of this situation, an answer to either Squall or Mayor Dobie's philosophy?
I see what you're saying. So like the theory of nonviolence is philosophically viable, right? Squall even acknowledges it, but he calls it dull, right? He's just sort of bored by it. But in practice, in this moment, it looks like, sorry, got some time happening. It looks like Squall's, combative approach is necessarily the right one. And I think that's fair. But then on the other hand, the Fisherman's Horizon has been around for a while, it looks like. It's evidently survived this long, and it might only be the fact that Garden is there, right? That is leading this direct conflict to kind of manifest, right? Which was what Dobie said when he first saw. So in a way, he's kind of proved himself right, that we should have just left, and then they'd have been safe. Now it's also really confusing though, because the opponent does not seem to be rational. That is, Idea is doing two conflicting things, or at least her seeds are doing one thing and she's doing something else. Because the white seed ship apparently is acting on her orders and came to get Alone and take her to safety. And it's like you said, this very beautiful cinematic sequence where the water is very animated and the sun is setting and the ship's sails kind of swoosh out a lot like Idea's own kind of headdress thing, right? Only white. And you know, um, and in a way, the Galbadians arriving and saying they're acting on Idea's orders is in direct contradiction to that, because they're saying that they're looking for Alone and they're going to burn the place down if they, whether they get her or not, right? They're just for the heck of it. Um, so there seems to be again some sort of really odd, irrational element to Idea's orders and the actions of those who are carrying them out on her behalf. And gosh, yeah. So all that to say, it might just be a matter of having an insufficiently rational interlocutor to dialogue with that is making Mayor Dobie's approach less than optimal here. It also does seem like the time thing is a real question, because if you can go back and change time, then of course you should act moral in every situation. And if things don't work out the right way, you can go back and adjust. And it again seems like that's part of what Alone is up to. If she's the one sending them dreams, which is implied, although not directly stated, right? She doesn't have time to explain. I think it's ironic that she says that. Um, but if that's the case, if the dreams are her attempt to go back and rewrite history in some way, or save somebody or protect somebody, then it definitely looks like that power, whatever that is superior to the force of arms, because it can again, undo anything that comes out contrary to your wishes. I really think that the the friends appearing from the defeated enemy is another kind of form of that too, right? Like you said, the opening cinematic, yeah, it's violent, but it's also this kind of limited violence. It's this training violence between rivals who aren't exactly enemies.
No.
And I guess it's still an open question, like what is the status of Idea and Galbadia? Are they really the enemy here, or is there something behind them? Estar, of course, was Laguna's enemy, but these people on Fisherman's Horizon, they're all from Estar. They've all turned away from that. And so when you say, Estar, you're forced to acknowledge that that doesn't include everyone from that place, right? So again, the people versus the place, the spirit versus uh, the nation, or whatever it is. I think those questions are all kind of emerging here as well. So
Well, that's
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say that's interesting because now you're referencing something I definitely wanted to touch on today, which is the side quests that one could engage in here. And I guess I should also mention, and I think we've done a good job of touching on almost everything that we've meant to so far, is that Galbadia Garden's former headmaster is here. So we have all of these forms of leadership too. And he's a card player too, and he thinks he's pretty good. He's got the students' old cards that he's confiscated. I did manage to beat him. and this other guy that had the original spider, the Dalit City spider machine that followed you.
Mm,
It has the cool sequence where it's taken out by the machine gun with that Quistis is wielding. If it makes it that far, it did for me. I didn't have any crazy special abilities, but I wanted to ask about well, I wanted to mention Martine and maybe failed models of leadership versus effective ones. And we've got Sid here, this mayor here, these Galbadian thugs following Adea, and then also Martine, who is, I suppose, no longer a leader. But I wanted to ask you about cards and the rules that are going on here, because I finally realized that I should have been doing the talking to the Queen of Cards, because there are plus and minuses and elements going on and sudden death. And if you draw, you have to play with the other card players, often inferior cards, which is terrible. I wanted to ask you about the Master Fisherman's quest, because I haven't finished that yet. Though I did talk to his protege, who is right next to a weapon shop, and I finally upgraded for the first time some of my weapons, which is a fun little game. But the weapon shop, interestingly, and I don't know if you saw any significance in this, plays the same tune as you heard when you first met Renoa at the dance. After becoming a seed, the da da na 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 na.
yeah.
And, so that was the third piece of music I wanted to bring up. But how are cards going for you? Can you tell us about S-Star and the relationship between this place and us? It seems like we're starting to circle S-Star, as it were.
Yeah.
And that is one of the only places we haven't been to yet. Now we even know how to get there too, right? Even though the railroads won't take us, we could run there. They said that was sort of funny, given the fact that it was a technological hub. But yeah, how are cards going? What did we learn from the fisherman's master? And also, did you where are you with your weapons? And
I did. I didn't. I mean, I didn't upgrade this time, but I did some time ago. Um, Only a couple people though. I just don't think it's as important as having on hand the items that you need in case you need to refine them into something else. So I generally have not pursued upgrading the weapons just yet. Um, the thing about the weapons, so I mean, the way it works in this game is a little bit counterintuitive, like a lot of the systems. You can craft them as soon as you have the necessary materials and you go to a weapon shop. You don't have to find the magazines that are scattered around for the weapons monthly. What the weapons monthly does is tell you the necessary materials to find or save up or whatever. Um, so it's a little bit strange in the sense that you can, as you pointed out, I think before, you can already have ultimate weapons for some of your characters if you just happen to know what the necessary materials are and how to refine them out of cards generally, or from stealing from enemies and this and that. Um, and that's, uh, I guess, like a weird, um, almost like a way to hack the game, right? Um, and of course, it comes back to cards, like everything does. And at this point in the game, the cards players in the garden have also emerged. So there's a side quest that involves playing against this club of cards players who have names related to the suits of a classic card deck. And you just sort of have to explore yet again and randomly encounter them by talking to everyone and asking everyone to play cards. And some of them only appear um, kind of randomly in different areas of the garden, so you won't necessarily find them even if you know where to look. So I just started doing that, but I haven't gotten very far with it. Um, the upshot of that quest is that when you eventually start changing some of your rare cards, your one-of-a-kind cards, into items, you can win them back much later in the game on your other mobile device, the Ragnarok ship. There'll be somebody who will play with all the cards that you've lost slash refined. So it's a lot like Martine, right? So Martine should have the card that you lost. If you got the Renault card, you had to lose Ifrit to get it. And Caraway told you that he lost it to Martine. So yeah, so Martine is sort of functioning in that similar kind of way of like, if you've lost some cards to some of the good players at Galvadia Garden, he'll have those cards, and he will have that card that you lost to Renault's dad. And so in a way, he's a failed leader, absolutely. Um, but he's also a kind of safety valve almost for the card game. Like if you are really stuck, you can get back into the card game at this point. And part of that is the randomness of the board that the rules tend to throw up those elemental plus or minuses, right? And that sudden death rule, where if you can just eke out a draw and you're playing someone who has better cards than you might have a better chance in the second round of that game because you've got some of their cards now, right? So there's some ways in which it seems to be trying to like entice you back in with these very pointed things about like, hey, if you've lost some cards, you can get them back. And and apparently Dobie and his wife both have some really rare cards as well. I think they both have a one of a kind GF Quetzalcoatl and Irving cards. I couldn't get them to play them though, and so I don't know if I'll get another chance somewhere down the line. But oh, I meant to say the other thing about their house is it's got the Ultima draw point that's hidden in the corner there. And so the
Uh,
strongest spell in the game, right? The strongest offensive magic and the strongest conjunction happens to be in the house of the pacifist and his wife. And what does that say, right? It's I think it's suggesting that they are very strong and don't appear it, and they don't use it. Perhaps again that kind of passivity um, to their strength. Uh, I think you get to draw just exactly once from that draw point, though. I don't think it will ever renew. Um, so it's one of those. I mean, it's yeah, really suggestive that Martine is sitting right outside, kind of in the posture of the fisherman, but in a very different mood, right? The fisherman, he's sitting there and he's active. He's fishing and he's waiting for the big fish. And sure enough, he almost gets taken out by Garden, but not so bad that he's deterred because he's right back out there when you go and find him. Versus Martine, who is sitting there and really just kind of glumly brooding on all that he's lost. Um, now he doesn't say outright, but of course, part of the problem is that uh, he was outplayed, right? He tried to um, put one over on Sid and Balam Garden and kind of got burned. So all of his machinations, all of his wheeling and dealing is essentially over, and he just functions as a place to get your cards back. Um, the Master Fisherman, on the other hand, right? He is uh, more than meets the eye, right? He initiates this side quest that involves going back and forth and talking to his apprentice down there by the weapon shop, where that song that plays, it's very quiet on my game, and maybe that's the thing with the original release, or I always kind of interpreted that to mean that that song is playing like on a radio somewhere,
sound like
kind of like Old Man in the Sea style, like someone's listening to a radio and that's the song that's playing over and over. Um, anyway, yeah, so you get these very bizarre little sequences where the fisherman's apprentice keeps casting like wildly, and it keeps like entangling itself or breaking the glass of the weapon shop over there. And and when you start the side quest, he actually like gets his line strangling the card shop or the weapon shop owner, and it like lifts him up, and Squall has to go over and like save him. The weapon shop owner initiates a battle with the apprentice. At that point, the battle music starts to play, and their text is like in yellow and red, and it's like they're fighting each other through speech almost, right? So again, this kind of medley of violence and nonviolence through dialogue. Um, it's very odd. Anyway, Squall mediates. He continues to run back and forth to the master, the apprentice, and eventually the master agrees to meet you at the inn to talk a little more. And that's where he reveals like the origins of Fisherman's Horizon has to do with them leaving Estar. They're all like elite technicians and mechanics, but they have chosen not to use their skills for violence, right? They've tried to find another way. and that involves evidently sort of like repairing things, maintaining things, um, and all that they build is for um, preservation and not destruction. Uh, at least so far, right? Because they're willing to help refurbish gardens. I found that really interesting. They're so um, set on getting you to leave that they're willing to repair your mobile weapon essentially. But I guess a garden's a missile shelter. So anyway, yeah. So that's I guess the upshot of that side quest so far. You also get like a very powerful healing item if you have been talking to the cafeteria lady in garden. Her son appears after the fight with the weapon, um, and if you talk to him, you'll I think you get like a mega elixir that'll heal up your entire party in battle. So he's been traveling. He's another one of these foils for Squall, right? He's been traveling the world, and all that he's seen has kind of left him jaded, not um, enlightened as he was hoping. And so what you tell him is go back and talk to your mom, and that's like the key, I guess, to um, fan his flagging hopes and set him back on his path. So yeah, so there's a number of side quests here: the cards, the fisherman, the cafeteria lady's son, that all seem to be very thematically tied in with this idea of who is the true hero, who is the true leader, what is the nature of the place or the person, right? Um, how does one transcend or at least better one's nation that you're born into, right? How do you encounter history and carry it forward in a meaningful way? All those things I think are at play in the side quests here, and they're very easy to miss. Like I didn't see, even though I knew to look for it, I didn't see the ladder that goes down to the fisherman. Um, it just looks like part of the background.
Pre-rendered
And
backgrounds.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, I do really enjoy this part of the game. As I mentioned, just the music, the art, the water, like the effects of the water, even in the original game, are really impressive. They're just fun to chill and zone out and to think about philosophical things. Because yeah, none of the battles are that hard. They're all just kind of
I mean, and part of your mission from Sid, furthering the desire to make you into a leader, is he says he expects high things of you, and he says, observe the town. He's like, he wants you to see more and more, adding to your notion that the cafeteria, the worker's son is a foil to Squall. Though, of course, he has a mother. Though on this day, Mother's Day, here in the United States, maybe one should call on one's mother, like the cafeteria boy does. I wanted to one thing I did want to mention though is that some of the images and the and notions that you brought up through the course of talking about the side quests have really Christian sort of eschatological flavor to them. So the place is called Fisherman's Horizon. So the poem Andrew of men, the like I think was it Peter and Andrew, I can't remember which of the two disciples were literally fishermen, but they say of the great shepherd that he is a fisher of men, same way that he is a shepherd of men, or even if they're allegorically described as goats and sheep, as it were, types of men or people, as it were. In any case, you get the spell ultima here, which is from Latin, means last. And so there's an eschatological sort of theme here. And then I get these really, really cyan vibes from Mayor Dobie. Cyan, I believe I'm getting the name right, from Xenogears.
oh, Satan.
Satan,
The yeah.
who is at first sort of like a doddering old man who, or, middle-aged man who's really good with technology. And even when he fights with you, he's like pretty good. Then eventually gets his sword, and he's amazing. But it turns out that
Yeah.
there's a lot more to him than one knows. And I wonder if Mayor Dobie is like him. He is one of these S-Star people who ostensibly, if he were working on Balam Garden or on a Gundam-like mech or Xenogear-like mech, would be of some use because he has this extraordinary engineering prowess from this extraordinarily technologically futuristic place, even within, especially within the world of Final Fantasy VIII. This is the most progressive technological place by some margin, by a huge margin. They've achieved even space travel. We'll find out, and maybe even a little bit more than that as we get into things like the Lunar Cry, as it were, eventually. But so this man is pacifist, but there's much more to him in terms of knowledge. The ultimate magic is in his home. One wonders, Wes, whether if we'd had a third option to just watch what happens with this guy, what would have happened? I don't know that he wouldn't have been capable of handling himself against these three soldiers. Maybe like Saitan, maybe he knows Ultima. Maybe he can use technology or weapons that we don't understand, and maybe he would have been willing to die for that. Though he was also choosing to let all of his people die, though ostensibly they embody the same philosophy as he does. But I see, along with his pacifism, also these Christian images. Fisherman on horizon is also an image of the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
The end of one's. It literally means end boundary. A zone, like in the Iliad, the zone of Aphrodite is like a garter, something that surrounds, or like a belt.
Yeah.
And so a horos is a boundary itself, or a limit, abstractly speaking. So it's like a limit, boundary, a horizon. The horosphere is what Lobachevsky talks about from our beloved St. John's. So horizon, fisherman, Ultima, these images of the end alongside these images of fishing for people in a pacifist way, but also being from a more advanced people, technologically speaking. These are, I guess, the tangent I would make from this is these people's pacifism is not rooted in being backwoods, uneducated rustics. These are individuals who are extremely smart, avant-garde level smart, have chosen a different path based on what they know. And I guess probably what they know the results of many of their technological efforts were, which were undoubtedly violent, that they probably created weapons of war. And that's part of the reason they left Astar. I don't know that the fisherman gets into that.
It's sort of implied, and he tries to keep the emphasis on Dobie's history. He doesn't talk about himself, but then after you go through that, then you talk to other people. It emerges that he was kind of like the master engineer of them all, and sort of involved in leading them along with Dobie out of Estar to this other place, this kind of limit. And he's the one who came up with the name. That's the interesting thing that I should have mentioned. I guess part of the dialogue there that you continually are having with him, someone's asking, like, how did you pick that name? And he's putting on this air of like, oh, I just like randomly chose it. Again, not really saying, not letting on the deeper meaning there. And it's Squall who has the option of saying, well, I always, I understand it to mean that you're seeking something more, that you're, in that questing, that heroic leader sort of vein. And so although Squall has been very reticent up to this point and has been aloof and proud and protective of himself, in this way you can see he's starting to have the ability to not only empathize with others, but find meaning in their attempts to help, to save, to be those kinds of leaders for their people. I think, the emergence of historical events in this very sleepy place it probably is going to be a benefit to them in the long run. Like we see
Well, they
while
can do
saving.
it too. They're helping
Yeah,
the people who will save the world in this
yeah.
respect. Like I think that, yeah.
So yeah, this place is um, apparently self-sufficient, but again, it has this quality of relying on um, know-how, on material, on uh, the influx of something from elsewhere. Um, the uh, the static nature of the mayor's house in the center of um, the mirrors or the solar panels. Um, it has a kind of stagnant quality to it, right? And everything's kind of rusty and kind of run down. So you could see a way in which this idyllic place could be a dead end. Um, but if you choose to kind of remain open to outside influences, um, obviously it does have this incredible healing potential that's holding in reserve here. And yeah, I don't think that we're done with this place by any stretch because there's at least one more side quest that's kind of like hinted at here with the Shumi, right? Because there's this shop where the guy's like, all this stuff I got from the Shumi elder or whatever, um, or the village, and someone else in town asks you about Master Norg, like, did he evolve yet?
The
Like,
evolve,
was he a Pokemon? And so again, like we clearly don't know much about the wider world. And this guy's like, oh, you'll figure it out. Don't worry. So so yeah, there's at least one more side quest involving the Shumi that we'll have to kind of run back and forth to this place with. And once they've repaired Garden and we do maybe one or two more little things here, we're going to start to be able to, explore the world, or at least all the parts of it that touch water, and spread our message of the true meaning of seed in a good missionary fashion, and do some crazy side quests and things. So we'll have to kind of coordinate a little bit, I think, now to decide what we're supposed to do first, or we'll just do whatever and we'll talk about, some different things next time. I'm not sure.
I think that's a smart idea. And what you're saying makes me really wonder about the nature of this place. Is it like an Eden or like an Age of
Mhm.
Gold, or is it more like a Calypso's island, right? Very similar to an Eden, but a place that it's a false Eden in a way, right? Both Eden and Calypso's world are outside of time, but Calypso's islands, sorry for saying world, um, exists outside of time within a world that is subject to time. So time passes for
Exactly.
everything outside of oneself. And so one wonders here whether also this is sort of a criticism, unconscious or conscious, of Christianity within the world of Final Fantasy VIII, but perhaps also within a world that has war in it, right? What is
Mhm.
the value of a pacifist ideology when there are warriors at the gates? Now, of course, there have been popes that have pushed off the Goths before, but even the pope that did that once for Rome he didn't achieve that feat twice when it happened again. Um,
Yeah.
but 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 what is the value of pacifism when war is extant? And on the other, and one can't answer that I think easily, because if pacifism then uses the tools of war again, has it maintained its own philosophical priors and stayed pacifist? And so insofar as Christianity is supposed to be and Christ is seen as a messianic, sort of peaceful, pacifying figure rather than a military figure, which I think he can also be seen as. Um,
Mhm.
I wonder if this is a criticism of that way of thinking, and even a denigration of Edenic thinking to thinking that even if you want a little oasis in the world, in Eden, insofar as the whole world is not Eden, you really only have Calypso's Isle instead,
Yeah.
and that there is a difference. And even if you are outside of time, and perhaps this will accord with our theme, insofar as the rest of the world is subject to it, there's a dissonance that changes the nature of what you are in the world.
Yeah.
Unless you're sharing it with everybody, a shared time space, I guess. Not Eden. Calypso's Ogygia. But yeah, so that's those are my reflections to yours. Funny that I should mention the Christian message right after talking about evolution and the evolution of the Shumi. I think the sophisticated religious person can maintain both theories at the same time, but obviously we both grew up with so many funny debates between fundamentalists and science wonks, as it were. But Final Fantasy VIII is a world that admits of many worlds to influence it. I think it is itself like Fisherman's Horizon, in that it is an oasis that has many influences, but unlike Fisherman's Horizon, in that it doesn't even pretend to be pacifist in nature.
And right, exactly. It's a place that you return to, you recover there, and then you set out again.
Yes.
Not a place you can remain
Yes.
for too long.
Yes. No, that's we'll have to really think about that. The Tavern-esque, that reminds me very much of the Sandman volume, with Fallen from Grace, Neil Gaiman. Still a great writer. The whole episode is sort of a tavern that takes place across media and time. So mythological characters and people from all different times meet this tavern to tell their own stories. And so it's like a library, right? Is I think that what it truly is, but represented in a really cool fashion that appealed to me in my early 20s. Well, my friend, I think we really we had quite a good haul of fish this time around, and I think we got to get to now skinning them and eating them, because we are what is it that gets sore when one fishes? I don't fish. One's arms. My arms are sore from catching so many fish. Unlike the case in Zelda, when I never caught any Ocarina of Time in particular. I never caught that giant fish that everybody was always looking for in the lake. That was semi.
This game needs a good fishing mini game. I can't believe they missed that opportunity here.
I mean, with so many excellent mini games too. That's something perhaps we can talk about sometime, is just like the quality of mini game, and just like the fact that cards is so fun and addicting, and not just a crummy side game, kind of like some of the Final Fantasy VII ones, which were so bad. Like in the Golden Saucer, those games, not that great.
Yeah.
But then, Triple Triad might be the best part of the game for some people.
Easily.
They especially hit the cultural ethos with, Magic the Gathering being so big at that time too. It was brilliant. I think Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh were coming right after that too, and they also had a pretty strong moment. Though an interesting synchronicity here is that Magic the Gathering is just now publishing this year its Final Fantasy editions of cards.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, no, I think I just saw Final Fantasy X got representations. Maybe Final Fantasy VIII too. I'll need to look into it. But yes, so many of our mythologies are cross-pollinating now. Well, yeah, maybe we can talk about that. And my last note is I have something potentially exciting to announce in a couple weeks, but if I don't make the announcement, nothing exciting happened. And also we may have to talk about a newer game soon, a PS5 game that's gotten a lot of buzz from other commentators like Zyger and Resonant Arc, who do a little bit more just game commentary and journalism as opposed to our sort of scholarship and philosophical reflection. This game, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which one of the creators is a lover of Final Fantasy VIII. And so perhaps to further investigate Final Fantasy VIII, we'll have to jump through time ourselves and see whether some of the elements that we love in this old series can be manifested in the game that to your son William looks brand new and not just like some old game.
Yeah. yeah, if you have the hardware to play it, you should check it out. I'm waiting on Switch 2, see if it comes across um in any kind of timely fashion.
Good
And
luck.
yeah, all those games will probably be making their way onto there eventually. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah, worth looking into.
Okay. Well, worth looking into indeed. Well, my friend, until next week, happy Mother's Day and a happy Mother's Day to your wonderful wife and to
Thanks.
your wonderful mother. And looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. Have a good one.